What happened when Blake Shelton stormed off after a heated exchange with Jimmy Kimmel left audiences stunned and scrambling to make sense of what they had just seen. Blake, the country superstar known for his humor and charm, walked onto the stage expecting a fun and relaxed conversation. The night began with laughter and playful jabs, typical late-night banter. But as Jimmy pressed harder into a subject Blake wasn't eager to discuss, the mood shifted. Blake's smile stiffened, his voice lost its ease, and the tension in the studio thickened. What was supposed to be a light-hearted interview turned into an uncomfortable standoff that would end with one of country music's biggest names rising from his chair and heading for the exit. At first, the chemistry between Blake and Jimmy was what fans expected. They traded jokes about Blake's music, his time on The Voice, and even a few quips about his relationship with Gwen Stefani. The audience roared, enjoying every minute of the banter. But then, Jimmy steered the conversation toward controversies Blake had worked hard to leave in the past. What should have been an easy laugh quickly soured as Blake's tone grew sharper, signaling that the discussion had veered into territory he had no interest in revisiting. Jimmy, never one to back down from pushing a button or two, pressed the issue again, trying to frame it as humor. Blake leaned forward in his chair, his jaw tight, and answered curtly. The exchange grew uncomfortable, with the audience torn between laughing politely and sensing that things were going off track. The sparkle in Blake's eyes was gone, replaced by a guarded look that made clear he was no longer playing along. When the tension reached its breaking point, Blake stood abruptly, the sound of his chair dragging across the stage silencing the room. He removed his microphone, set it firmly on the desk, and without waiting for Jimmy's next words, strode toward the wings of the studio. The crowd gasped, unsure if they had just witnessed a staged bit or a genuine moment of frustration. Jimmy, caught off guard, tried to recover with a quip, but the humor fell flat against the weight of Blake's storm-off. The studio audience shifted uneasily in their seats. Some whispered, others nervously chuckled, trying to convince themselves it was all part of the show. But deep down, everyone knew it wasn't. Blake's body language had carried a sincerity no comedy sketch could replicate. The tension hung in the air, the laughter gone, replaced by a heavy silence that no amount of late-night polish could disguise. Backstage, producers scrambled to figure out how to handle the disaster. Some urged Jimmy to cut to commercial, others debated whether to keep rolling and hope Blake cooled down enough to return. But it quickly became clear that Blake wasn't coming back. His walkout had turned the show upside down, transforming a routine late-night segment into a viral spectacle before the cameras had even stopped rolling. Jimmy did what he does best: improvised. With the forced grin, he told the audience, "Well, I guess that's one way to end an interview," drawing nervous laughter. He pivoted quickly to the next guest, but the energy in the room never fully recovered. No matter how many jokes he cracked, everyone's mind was still on Blake's sudden and dramatic departure. By the time Blake left the building, paparazzi were already waiting. Cameras flashed as reporters shouted questions, but Blake kept walking, his expression set in stone. He didn't stop for photos, didn't offer a statement, and didn't look back. For someone usually so approachable and easygoing, his silence spoke volumes. The heated exchange clearly hit deeper than anyone realized. Online, the fallout was instant. Clips of Blake storming off the Jimmy Kimmel live set flooded Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Fans debated whether Jimmy had pushed too hard or whether Blake had overreacted. Hashtags like Days Blake Storms Off and Kimmel Clash began trending, sparking fiery debates that extended beyond country music circles into mainstream pop culture. Some praised Blake for standing up for himself, while others criticized the walkout as unprofessional. By the next morning, headlines around the world were blazing with the story. Blake Shelton storms off after heated exchange with Jimmy Kimmel. Talk shows, radio hosts, and podcasts picked apart every second of the interview, speculating about the exact moment things went wrong. In the end, the walkout became more than just a viral clip. It was a reminder of how quickly live television can turn volatile. and how even the most seasoned performers have limits when it comes to being pushed too far. Blake Shelton's team went into immediate damage control the moment he left the set. Calls poured in from reporters demanding statements, and social media was ablaze with speculation. His management debated whether to spin the moment as a misunderstanding, a comedy bit gone wrong, or simply leave it alone. But the silence only made fans hungrier for answers. Blake, known for his candid personality, chose not to speak right away, leaving the public guessing whether his exit was final or if he'd eventually laugh it off in true Blake fashion. Jimmy Kimmel, meanwhile, found himself under scrutiny. Critics accused him of crossing a line by pressing Blake on topics that clearly struck a nerve, while others defended him as a host doing his job. The debate raged online, with viewers split between siding with Blake's refusal to engage and Jimmy's persistence in chasing a headline-worthy moment. What was clear, however, was that the clash had transformed from a late-night mishap into a full-blown cultural talking point. The network behind Jimmy Kimmel Live found itself balancing two realities. On one hand, the ratings spike from the viral walkout was undeniable. Millions were now watching clips and tuning into replays. On the other hand, the incident cast a shadow over the show's reputation, raising questions about whether guests felt safe from being pushed too far. Executives debated behind closed doors whether to issue an apology, smooth things over with Blake privately, or let the controversy ride out. Blake's fans rallied around him online, flooding his pages with supportive messages. Many argued that walking away was the right choice, a sign of strength rather than weakness. They praised him for refusing to let his boundaries be trampled, turning his storm off into a moment of empowerment. Others shared personal stories of choosing to walk away from uncomfortable situations, framing Blake's decision as relatable rather than dramatic. Within the entertainment industry, the incident became a hot topic. Fellow country artists and Hollywood stars weighed in, some applauding Blake for standing his ground, while others cautioned that leaving mid-interview could strain relationships with networks. Comedians, in particular, debated Jimmy's role, questioning whether pushing buttons for laughs had gone too far. The clash sparked a broader conversation about how much pressure entertainers face in live interviews. A few nights later, Jimmy addressed the controversy during his monologue. He joked about Blake's dramatic exit, turning it into a punchline for his audience, but behind the humor was a subtle acknowledgement that things had gone off the rails. His quip earned laughs in the studio, yet online viewers argued over whether he was making light of a serious situation or cleverly diffusing it. Either way, his comments reignited interest in the story, ensuring it stayed in the headlines even longer. Blake finally broke his silence during a concert, speaking to fans in his signature down-to-earth style. Without naming Jimmy directly, he told the crowd that sometimes you've just got to walk away when enough's enough. The audience roared in approval, cheering him on for standing tall in a moment of tension. By weaving the incident into his live show, Blake reframed the narrative on his own terms, reminding everyone that his voice carried more weight on stage than on a talk show couch. In the end, the heated exchange between Blake Shelton and Jimmy Kimmel became more than a fleeting late-night scandal. It highlighted the fragile balance between humor and respect, between entertainment and intrusion. Blake's storm-off wasn't just about anger. It was about boundaries, authenticity, and the unpredictability of live television. For fans, it was proof that even the biggest stars aren't immune to raw human moments. For the industry, it was a lesson that sometimes the most powerful statement isn't made with words, but with the decision to simply walk away.